Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Fellow citizens, following the sequence of events, Uganda seems to be at political crossroads.
I'm not a servant of anybody.
Madam, I know the law.
As such, Alternative Digital brings you the Interface Show with retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besuje.
Let's keep on the same page on Alternative Digitalk,
As he gives you the alternatives on the transition question, rule of law, human rights and freedom, youth inclusion in governance, economic stagnation, as he confirms.
I'll be always here Saturday from 10 a.m. in the morning. Be there.
Don't miss the live discussion on the Alternative Uganda, Digitalk TV Facebook pages, and the Alternative Uganda YouTube channel.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
A good evening to you, all our viewers. We thank you for joining us again this evening for the Hotline Show. It is the 28th day of November 2022, and this could be the last, it's actually the last Hotline Show in this month of November. Well, as you all know, there is a lot happening and taking place across the world. Protests in China are still going on. The citizens are trying to, to resist the lockdowns being imposed onto them by the government because of the coronavirus. And of course, in the world of sport, for the sports lovers, yes, Cameroon and Senegal, that match ended. It was a draw, 3-3, and then of course you still have more hopes. Ghana made it after smashing South Korea 3-2, and then of course later on we shall be having Brazil versus Switzerland. Yes, back home a lot of things are happening. In the line of politics, so many things are taking place. Last week we all know that the FDC had its national council meeting, basically to forge way forward on how they can bring the FDC party to, I don't know the best word I can use, but how best they can revive and bring back the glory of the FDC party until they capture power through democratic means. Well, my name is Abdalatif once again, and in the studios I am joined by the FDC party president, that's Honorable His Excellency, I don't know whether it applies in the FDC or it's, Honorable Patrick Oboi Amuriat, the party president of the FDC since 2017. He has been on the front seat, and yes, tonight we need to give an account of his leadership for the time he has been in that big office. What are some of his achievements? What are some of the things that we have been able to do? What has not been able to be done? And what new plans do they have? We have also learned that the FDC, they have come up with a new strategic plan. Actually, the third strategic plan. That is strategic plan 2022 to 2027. Well, it's a pleasure to have you, Ingenia Honorable Patrick Oboi Amuriat. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, my brother Abdalatif. A good evening to you, viewers. It's a great joy being here on Digitalk for the first time.
Indeed.
And really very, very delighted to be speaking to viewers out there from wherever you are. And thank you for inviting me here. I hope to interface with our supporters and admirers, common Ugandans and people all over the world on this platform.
Thank you so much. Well, that's our guest tonight, and those with burning questions, please just keep them. You know the right time when you'll be able to forward them. Even for the calls in the second year, we will also be opening up the lines for those who wish to communicate and speak directly to Honorable Patrick Oboi. Well, there is a lot when you look at the FDC from 2006. That's when you had the highest number of members of parliament. You had 37 out of a parliament that had 319 members of parliament. And then in 2011, the curve slightly went down. You came up with 34 members, much as the parliament became bigger to 375 members of parliament. And then you again put up a fight in 2016, and the members of parliament rose again to 36 out of again a bigger house, over 426 members of parliament. And then in 2021, things seem to have again gone down to 32 members of parliament out of a parliament of 529. This is the only time that FDC is having the least number of members of parliament since its inception. What is happening?
Well, to judge the progress of the FDC or any other political party in the opposition on the basis of elections alone is not being fair, because that in doing that, you are crediting the elections.
Okay.
Yes. And whereas it may give a rough picture of the progress of a party, of the failures of a political party in the opposition, it shouldn't be the only measure. It shouldn't be the only yardstick.
Okay.
But since you want to take me there, we can discuss this based on our increasing or reducing numbers in parliament.
Okay.
But I also do want to bring in other parameters. It's not only in parliament where there is political competition.
There's local government.
Political competition in local governments. There is a political competition from the village.
Yes.
There is also the aspect of the coverage across the country, which definitely represents the political strength of an organization like ours. And so, to directly answer your question, I want to say that it is true that the numbers have continued to come down of members of parliament. Firstly, because of the political environment that we find ourselves in.
Okay.
That the Museveni dictatorship is becoming more and more repressive. That the Museveni dictatorship is unwilling to deliver a truly free, fair, and credible election. That in the year 2021, of all the other political contests that we had, this has been the most repressive one, where COVID was used as a political tool to tie down the political opposition in this country. You know that when we went out to campaign, no political gatherings were allowed on account of COVID. Wherever we went, we were attacked. You know, as a presidential flag bearer of the FDC, in the 65 days of political contest that we had, I was arrested 45 times, sometimes twice in a day. And today, I have 10 political cases across the country that I have to attend to. I'm looking free now because I was granted court bail in different courts in this country. And you know, in very, very awkward situations, in the middle of a campaign, I am arrested at Kakumiro and taken to court at 9 p.m. in the evening in a dark courtroom. If it hadn't been for the lights from the cameras of the journalists, probably the magistrate would not be able to take his notes. Maybe they could have imported a torch to do this. And so really the repression in this country against political players who want to wrestle power from Mr. Museveni is increasing. Okay. Of course, needless to talk about the many people who died in Kampala here on account of the arrest of my colleague, the Honorable Chagulanyi in Luka. You know, there was a backlash here in Kampala. And so that too affects our ability to mobilize for activism. So, nonetheless, when you look at the political journey that we have walked as the FDC, and I really want to put it into context of the time when I took over in 2017, we have had our share of difficulties within the party. In 2017, there was an acrimonious election that brought me into the leadership of the FDC.
On 24th November.
Yeah, but 27th really. Billing me against the then party president, General Gregory Mugisha Muntu Oyera. And what happened was a fallout within the party. Nearly 25 members of parliament at the time decided to go with General Muntu in forming the Alliance for National Transformation in 2018. And so it was incumbent upon me first to get back our people. And then second, yes, before, you know, total confusion reigned in their minds. And that was painstaking.
Okay.
It took me long hours speaking on a one-to-one with especially the members of parliament.
To lure them back.
Yes, to get them back, to impress upon them the need for us to work as a team. You know, to say to them, look, why would you kill your own baby? Or why would you pour out the baby with the bath water? And this wasn't easy feat. We had to struggle. And thanks to our effort, we were able to bring
20.
you know, a number of MPs back, nearly 20 members of parliament, who then, you know, saw the light and decided that the best thing for them was to stay within the fold.
Did you apply the same energy to lure back the former president of the party?
Well, I did actually speak to General Muntu, and some of the party elders would bear me witness. I went with them to him. We had the occasion 3 times to discuss what was happening within the party. And for me, my appeal to him was that, you know, not all was lost by virtue of the fact that he lost in that election, and that it could still, you know, be useful within the party. Yeah. Indeed, and I want to say this on record, had General Muntu stayed within the fold, my suspicion is that he would have been our presidential flag bearer. Because he'd always wanted to be the flag bearer of the FDC, but it appeared to him like Dr. Kizza Besigye was actually standing on his way. And I never had interest in running for presidency of this country. Actually, my mind had been prepared to go back to a constituency and compete as a member of parliament. But as it turned out, we couldn't leave that space. It would have been a disaster for the party if we didn't have a presidential candidate. Maybe today we would not be having much to speak about, you know, when it comes to the FDC. And so we said, no, we are going to have a candidate. You know, I do not think that in all these times, you know, Muntu had any interest in running as a member of parliament. And so this would have been his opportunity. And I said this to him. I said, not everything is lost. You do not know when you will be relevant in the political equation of the FDC. And 2021 for sure would have been an opportunity for him to run as presidential flag bearer of the FDC. And with all the infrastructure that the FDC has, with all the support that we have across the country, my bet is that he would have performed much better than he did perform, even if the election itself had credibility problems. So, in the question of what we have done within that time, I dare to say that we have tried as much as possible as a team to keep the party together. Cohesion of the party has been paramount in whatever we did at the initial stages. And I think that in this we have done an excellent job. Because again, if we hadn't worked tooth and nail, day and night, rain and shine, we would not have a party moving in the same direction today. So that can be credited to the efforts of not only the president, but of the entire team that worked very hard
At
to
different
ensure,
levels.
yes, including, at the lower levels, getting back people,
Yeah.
to the fold. We also went aggressively out there to market our party through rallies, through town hall meetings, through radio talk shows like this.
Amidst the
Yes, a lot of troubles that we had, and true to our billing as FDC, being a party that is outgoing, that is aggressive, we were able to win over, even from the NRM, a sizable number of people. Some of them holding key responsibilities in this country. And I want to cite just one person, my friend and colleague, who at one time was a member of the Democratic Party, later came in as an independent member of parliament. I served with him in the August House, the Honorable Moses Kabusu. Moses Kabusu came to my office, having been encouraged by our foot soldiers about the need for him to work with us. And, he did come and said, we have a long history together, Mr. President, because I believe in your leadership and I believe in what I see happening. I am going to run for Member of Parliament as FDC. The other example that is vivid is the example of Dr. Nicholas Kamara, who was at the time, moving from the NRM to find a political home. He did approach us, and in the National Council meeting before the one we had recently, we unveiled him as one of us, part of our family. And Dr. Kamara did go to Kabale municipality, and he made us proud by winning a political seat in Kabale municipality as Member of Parliament. So those are just a few examples. There are many other examples at different levels of leadership, of leaders and members of other political groupings that have come to the FDC and are working with us today, some of them in high positions. So that is a credit to us.
Yeah, sure.
I went to Nawaikoke in Kaliro,
yes.
in Busoga, and in a single rally we were able to convert 158 members of NRM who joined the FDC, including somebody who was running as LC3, and that person actually won that seat as FDC. Yes. So my administration didn't go to sleep immediately. I won. We began to do work, reaching out to people, and our outreach, especially nationally, yielded results. Now, the FDC has also participated in activism. You have seen our women going out in the streets.
Yeah.
You have seen our youth going out in the streets. You have seen our leader, Dr. Kiza Besigye, leading the drive. And together we have worked on a program of activism that has helped embolden the Ugandan population, that has helped the Ugandan population to believe in demanding from the regime in power. And this really, is something that we have worked on in the last 20 years, nearly 20 years of our existence. Of course, we can also talk about the 5 years when we were pressure group, reform agenda, and PAFO. And
National Democratic Forum?
Yes, of Mr. Chapa Karuhanga.
Yes.
And this is one of the building blocks on which new organizations and political groupings are standing. You can talk about the coming of People Power and NUP. It didn't come from nowhere. It came through the power of the people, through our work, the work that we did with the population to embolden them. 20 years ago, Uganda had a naive population, a population that was unwilling to demand, a population that would be trampled upon and would never speak about the pain that they're going through, a population that thought they were favored by the regime in power, even to do the very basic of providing services, goods and services to the people. They thought that it was a privilege and not a right. Today, the Ugandan population will not stand a bad road. The minimum they can
Rise
do,
up.
yes, is to speak about it. The minimum they can do is to, have a conversation within themselves. And, they will go on social media and say, our road is bad. They could even go beyond that by closing the road and saying, no vehicle is going to pass here unless something is done about our road. You never saw this before. And I think if there is any group of people that should be credited for this, it is the organization that I lead today.
Okay.
It is the one. So we have emboldened the people through activism. We have returned to them their right to speak out through our own activism. And this is a work in progress. It's going to continue.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Amuriat. You've talked about the elections that you've participated in, actually for 4 times now. The FDC has been part of this.
Yes,
and
indeed.
I've been reading through. I read through your preamble your remarks within the strategic plan, and just like you've re-echoed it here, much as you participate in these elections, there are a number of things that take place. You cite rigging, intimidation, repression, and a number of that. But one would ask, why have you continued to participate into the same election that you well know of the outcome?
First of all, we use that platform to reach out to the people.
Okay.
Because the space is being conscripted every day. It's being reduced every day. By the way, every little space that we operate in was fought for. It was fought for. It was even fought for by those who came before us. You can talk about the Semo Gerere, the late Semo Gerere, whom buried recently. You can talk about the Cecilio Guals, who fought for the return of multi-party politics in this country. And many players, some of them are dead now. When we came in, we sought to increase our latitude, the area in which we would operate. And thankfully to some of our forefathers, Dr. Kiza Besigye and the others, whom we have fought with together, we've been able to create more breathing room for the political opposition in this country. Be that as it may, the dictator is also fighting back. He's not going to sleep. He's not going to allow us all the space that we would ordinarily require to be able to advance our programs. And therefore, beginning around 2018, immediately after I got into the leadership, in fact, I was welcomed in 2017, December, by the campaign on Tojikwataku.
Yeah.
If you remember the Red Ribbon, I was part of the Red Ribbon as we were campaigning for the presidency of the FDC. We went all over the country advocating for the population to defy that move by Mr. Museveni.
To amend Article 102.
To remove Article 102, to remove age limits, to allow himself to run for another term. And I remember, that campaign was bloody. There was loss of life. Particularly, I want to cite the incident where a young man, Nasasira, was shot down in Rukunjiri Stadium just in front of us. That was during the Muzanira's election, I think? It was after the Muzanira's election. It was 2017, when we had gone deliberately on a campaign. On Tojikwataku. Yes, on Tojikwataku. Yes. And the FDC took the lead in this. It did. Yeah. We accepted to discard our blue color, and we took on the red color, which eventually was taken by NUP. And we went around the country asking people to make a last-ditch attempt to fight this tendency. We also campaigned against MPs who were campaigning for the removal of age limits. And we told people, don't allow them any space in burials, in weddings, shout them down, heckle them, throw them out of meetings. And it worked. That campaign worked. We went to Rukunjiri. We fought, albeit with loss of lives and many injured, people whom some of them walk with without some of their organs today. These are things that may not be known to many, but this happened to us. So, we go into these campaigns, or any other campaign, to take advantage of the space that has been given to us.
For that particular
We
time.
do not believe that election by itself will bring change in this country. We don't. We know that we could reap some dividends by getting a few members of parliament, by getting some mayors, the Lord Mayor of Kampala, the Mayor of Soroti, the Mayor of Mbale, the division mayors in those areas. Yes, that is good, because then that gives us another platform from which we can speak. The Lord Mayor of Kampala can speak from the White House, the KCCA. So can the other mayors do, in their councils. They have got an opportunity to speak.
Your Excellency.
So we go to do that, exactly.
Well,
because of the ever-decreasing political space.
That's the time when you have some space.
Yes.
Much as that space is also
But it's also abused, by the way, because I've just given you the example of 2021, where bullets had to rain, in some parts of the country where I went, in Masindi, in Lira, in Kitagwenda. These are areas where we were literally attacked by the military and by the police, and not given any peace to carry out this campaign. Of course, luckily, some media houses did record what was going on. Our small social media team also did record. We have got photographic evidence of what happened in those campaigns, video evidence of what happened in those campaigns. And I think, this is something that can be a discussion for another day. So, recently there has been an argument within the FDC whether we should continue participating in elections or not. Whether it's a wise idea for us to now look for other ways of tackling the dictator without having elections. This is a matter that has been resolved from a resolution of the FDC National Council, which said we shall continue to adopt a two-pronged approach. That on one hand, we are going to have activism as a way to remove the dictator in between elections.
Okay.
And that if by the next election we do not get to our intended destination, and that is, getting power back to the people from the dictator's hands, then we will participate in an election. And therefore, of essence, is now the way we build strong structures. And this is one of the strategic objectives of FDC, strategic objection number 4, for building structures.
Actually,
we are going to build structures differently.
Well, before we even get to the strategic plan, I wanted to look at, there was a contest amongst the FDC members. And of course, perhaps the public, there was the element of defiance and then other approaches. I do not know how much has the defiance approach yielded for the FDC and the entire country.
As I said earlier, every block in defiance counts. It's like building a house. When you add one block, you are making progress. Even if the rate is slow, you are moving towards achieving your objective of freeing the Ugandan population. So, we decided in the FDC to have a two-pronged approach. And the defiance is being led by Dr. Kiza Besigye. He is really at the forefront of this, leading us. And I believe he's done an excellent job in exposing the evils of the junta that has bedeviled this country, that has kept the local population extremely poor and powerless. And this in itself, as I said earlier on, has helped to embolden the population. It has helped the population to rise up, in certain cases. And if you saw activities in Busoga, in Buenje, in Jinja, where our activists said, no, we are not going to have what is going on. There's rising prices. They are going to, highlight these rising prices. In Kampala, the women, Anna Deke, Nyanjura, Margaret Wokuri and the others, Mwonyi, Mariam Kizitu, who took to the streets on account of the very, very hopeless situation that the local people in Uganda are facing today because of rising cost of living. And they made their point. They were rounded up by the Museveni police and dumped in Luzira. Today they have to answer cases. But that very act alone created awareness not only locally, it created a concern and awareness internationally about our human rights records. And so when you see a minister being chased by women trying to defend a position that is not defendable, everybody knows
where it's coming from.
Yes. So the news has tightened on the regime, even internationally. If we had sat in our houses and said, well, what can we do? If we had thrown our arms in the air and said there is nothing we can do against this cruel dictatorship, where would we be as a country? So we'll keep pushing. Whatever gains we make, however slowly we gain, it really doesn't matter. We know that one day we are going to get to our destined place.
Well, for the 20 years the FDC has been in place, it has somehow enjoyed the privileges of leading the opposition in the country. Perhaps that opportunity was lost to a new kid on the block. I mean, the new party. What do you think, or what does the FDC miss in leading the opposition in parliament and maybe perhaps doing things differently from how they're being done today?
One thing that has always been a mindset in the FDC is that we are not fighting to be the leading opposition in FDC, and we've never fought to be the leading in Uganda. We have never been fought to be the leading opposition.
You want power?
We want power. You see, I think that even to believe that an institution like Parliament that has been captured by the dictator is of any use is really missing the point. What happens in that Parliament that affects the lives of people positively? I was a member of Parliament for 15 years, and my greatest frustration was that Parliament remained just an advisory forum to advise government. What they said there did not compel government to do anything. And so that is how it is structured.
Up to now?
Yes. Very recently, I think Parliament was clamoring, trying to change that. But so long as Parliament remains under the control of the NRM leader, it's not going to do much. What you will see passing in Parliament would be the desire of Mr. Museveni. What you would see passing in Parliament, appropriated in Parliament, is what Mr. Museveni would want. He will bring a loan request as he wishes. He will bring a supplementary, to Parliament, even if, the main budget has been passed just a week before. He will bring it and it's going to pass. Because he has built a majority in that house that adores him. And they are not going to point at him to say, look, you are going wrong here. sometimes the noises we hear in Parliament are intended. So that, one day you are going to have a meeting with the president and he's going to talk to you nicely, and then that suddenly is going to change when people come. The reasoning capacity is left in the meeting, and people no longer reason when they come to the house. So that house is under capture. And anybody can dare me on this. I spent 15 years in that house, and I left a frustrated person. Surely, because every time that I ran to become a MP, I thought things would improve. Instead, they wasn't. In 2005, that is when a proposal to remove term limits came. I was in that house. I was among the 58 MPs who voted against the removal of term limits. And, many now regret those who voted because they thought the patronage system that Museveni runs today in this country would favor them. He didn't. The attrition, the turnover of members of parliament is about 80 to 90%. Especially the NRM, they get out because the idea is to bring less experienced and less firm members of parliament, to be part of that parliament, so that what he is best at, that is manipulation, can work. So, losing to NUP did not hurt us to that extent that people think, this is a decline of the FDC. No, it didn't. In any case, I think NUP has got the opportunity to report back home what they have achieved as the leading opposition. I am sure they are going to be nursing the same frustration that we, as the FDC, have nursed in these many years. So, I think that not being in the leading opposition in parliament has not stopped our quality members of parliament articulating issues. And you have seen them. Few as they may be, now 31, because the election in Soroti was rigged.
Yeah,
a forced election. A forced election forcing us to go back to fight for a political seat that belonged to Watan, given by the people of Soroti City East to our member of parliament. And then you come with fake arguments about, the boundary, which was not a problem of our candidate. He won within the boundaries that had been set by the Electoral Commission. And then the same Electoral Commission being manipulated, an institution that has been taken over by Mr. Museveni, does the work that their master requires them to do. We lose one seat. So, even if we have got that disadvantage of numbers, our leaders in parliament have continued to shine.
Sure.
And I think that is really good because they have advanced the voices of the people.
Well, my other question, Honorable, in Uganda we have 26 registered political parties. And, not all, but many of these parties, some of these parties, there's so much on ground trying to, mobilize, do this and that. And we would think for those who, like for you now, who want to capture state power through democratic means, one would think you have two options. Either to win an election, you front a presidential candidate, he or she wins directly, which has proved to be difficult. Or you rally, you mobilize communities to have many members of parliament who can reason in a way which tandems with the population. That has also failed. What is really... Does it take us back to the hands being tied, or there is something...
I have heard this argument before, that, concentrate, get many members of parliament, and do the needful using those numbers in the house. That can only happen if there is a miracle. And I will say this. I have studied the psyche of Mr. Museveni, and he's just going to give you something to keep you alive, but not give you something to empower you. In fact, the members of parliament from the opposition partly are determined by the desire for Museveni to have some form of opposition in this country. The candidates may have their strengths, But should Mr. Museveni say, no, you will not go through, they'll do everything,
Frustrate you.
including announcing other persons winners.
We witnessed that somewhere in Busia.
Yes,
There were Njoki's election.
yes, exactly.
They announced the third person.
You know what happened? We have been victims of this. I will tell you what happened in 2016 when there was military force meted on us. And I can count the people who were affected because Mr. Museveni said they would not return. Honorable Wadri Kasiano, who by some luck went through in the by-election because everybody was there in that by-election. Honorable Alice Lasso, military force. Honorable Kanya Joffrey.
Tororo.
Yes. Honorable Jack Sabit. Myself, among others, had to be stopped from progressing beyond 2016.
Salamu Musumba.
Salam Musumba. All these are machinations of the dictatorship. Say, okay, on the chessboard, whom do we think will bring in some new person? They say they're strong enough, let them go. So, the number of the total opposition is always going to be maintained at a certain level. The numbers will only go up as the total number of seats available goes up. And that's what you see. NUP 57, FDC 31, DP a certain few, those who are loyal to Mr. Museveni anyway, UPC loyal to Mr. Museveni anyway, they're working with him. When put together, they say this is going to be, the upper limit. They're not going to go beyond this line. That is the mentality, and it is done deliberately. So nobody should tell me that the opposition coming together can form a formidable force to push for an increased number of members of parliament. It will not be allowed. Because that is where Mr. Museveni derives his strength. He doesn't want a stubborn parliament that is going to hard timing. And in order to have that, there has to be a threshold beyond which the FDC, the opposition shouldn't go. And those are the power dynamics. Go do your research.
But we've seen some stubborn members of parliament, stubborn in courts, who have consistently, made it. People like Honorable Semujunganda.
Nanda Lamafadi is probably a better example because he's serving his 5th term.
Yes.
Sometimes they say, why the trouble? What would this one? When there is enough trouble and people are prepared to die, the level of mobilization is pitch high. Those are seats that they can say, well, let them go through. Of what consequences is this going to be? Let's not give ourselves trouble in this. The strategists are going to walk around and say, if we allowed this, would this be fatal? Let's have a few voices talking in the House so that we have a semblance of parliamentary democracy.
It seems like you've done a proper diagnosis of the problem and you seem to be knowing what to do. What new strategies are you bringing on board to beat the junta, as you call him, because you now know where his strengths are, the tools he uses, whatever he does, where his strength is. So what are you doing to beat that?
What is important in our case is for us to rally the population.
Has it paid off for the time you've
done
that?
Again, the question of the junta not sleeping is there. A population that is weak and poor is very difficult to rally because they are going to think about what they are going to eat the next day. You see? So you're not going to come to Kampala here and say, folks, shut down your businesses and let's stop food coming into Kampala.
It can't happen.
Because people are going to say, how are my children going to feed for the next day? Most of our people live from hand to mouth. And so the question of poverty in this country is something that has crippled
Everything.
our move to push the dictator out. And you know, the dictator knows that. So he is going to ensure that he brings fake programs that would not empower the population economically. And he has succeeded. You know, all these development programs that have been brought on board by the junta, Okulembeka, Bonabagagawale, Emioga, whatever, Parish development model, are just smoke screens to blind the people. They are a gimmick to hoodwink the people of Uganda. And so the people continue to follow hopeless programs that are not intended for them to get better, programs that would only make them poorer, and yet continue to glorify the current regime as doing something to get them out of poverty. And so we've gone to the population and we are educating them deliberately that this NRM government is not going to get you out of poverty. And we have given them the examples of our forefathers. These kind of programs never existed.
But people were okay.
Yes, they progressed. They were able to take their children to school. The household incomes were higher than what we see today. The quality of life, even without the new technologies that have come to place,
it was much better.
Yes, was much better. They used their hurricane lamps, not solar, because there was no such technology. If solar had been there at the time, then they would be commonplace in the villages, on account of an empowered population. Look, when I was growing up, in the 70s, the economy of Singapore, Malaysia, and the other, those, just look at the Asian tigers first of all, was below our economy. The exchange rate of the pound against the shilling was 20 shillings for a pound. Wow. 20 against the pound. Now, the Asian tigers have progressed. They are among the first world countries today in terms of economic growth. Uganda has stunted. Of course, because of the kind of problems we had, firstly, but also a deliberate plan of this regime that has been in power for 40 years now to keep people at that level so that they may stay in abeyance. And therein lies the formula for a population that can be
So the
manipulated.
poverty we are seeing today, it is deliberate. It's the state or the regime to determine who should become well off, someone who should become slightly part of the middle class.
You see, today the figures running are like, the wealth that one person holds is wealth that about 40,000 people in this country should be having. You see? So one person, you Abdulatif, has taken what 40,000 people deserve to have. And that is deliberate. That is why the quest to fight against poverty is zero. The fight against corruption in this country, there is zero commitment. You remember when Betty Kamya, who was formerly FDC, I would like to say this, now appointed IGG, said we are going to carry an audit on the property owned by people. What did Museveni say? He said, you are not going to do this. These fellows are building the nation. These buildings coming up have owners. Some of them are known. They are hiding behind the proxies. This is what is happening in this country. And the idea is for the wealth of the population to be in the hands of 1%. That is the idea behind this. In the hands of 1%. 8% of the population. And today we are about 45 million, and 1% of 45 million is about 400,000 people. That is, it's actually not 40,000, it's about 400.
400, yes.
Yes.
How different would things be if the FDC party was in leadership?
My manifesto speaks volumes about this. We would put money in the productive sector. Today, 80% of the people are in agricultural production, but they have been reduced to peasantry. That is where the money would go. We would put money in technology development.
Actually, when you talk about agriculture, I know there is Uganda is a signatory to, I think, Maputo.
The Maputo Protocol.
Maputo Protocol, yes.
Yes.
Which calls for at least a minimum of 10% of the national budget.
That is what the Maputo Protocol talked about. For donkey years, in fact, since I joined Parliament, through these many years I was there, and then the additional 5 years I've been out of Parliament, now going to 6. The Maputo Protocol has just been in paper. What the government of Uganda has managed is 4%. Not even a half of the commitment they made in Maputo. So you can see that our priorities are inside out, upside down. And that, we are prepared to put money in high cost of administration, huge parliament for patronage purposes, too many districts in this country, and therefore a huge budget on administration within those districts. Instead of having a few districts where you would have administrators, a few administrators, you are having 3 times the number of districts that are required. And at the same time, there is no real devolution of power. Look at what Kenya has done.
Yeah.
With the governors of the different counties across the country. Devolution not only of power, but devolution of the budget, where money is brought to the center to where it is required, and implementation is done at the county level, leaving just little to be controlled by the center. Now, that empowerment is something that the current regime here would not want. So, for us, we would fight endemic corruption so as to reduce on the hemorrhage of resources, so that those resources that are saved would be taken where there is production. We would cut down on the cost of administration. In fact, in my manifesto, we recommended up to about 100, not beyond 150 members of parliament, so as to cut down on the cost of administration. We would also cut down on the number of districts, merge some districts, so that, we are able to pay, instead of paying people who are sitting in offices doing nothing, we are going to be paying for the essential services within the local community, extension services that would help the farmer to engage in profitable practices, agricultural practices.
One time
we would be able to build cooperatives so that people can produce together and market together. Very beautiful policy directions that we give in my manifesto.
Wow. Some time back, I had a discussion with one of the elders. And it's like, that man, Chiza Besigye, distorted things. When he talked about the elimination of graduated tax, that's how everything worsened now. Actually, that was, he was reacting to the high commodity prices. It's like, no, if we were paying our graduated tax, you pay maybe 10,000 or whatever figure. These commodities would, have a basic figure.
I think the elder really lacks knowledge about the kind of person in Museveni that we are dealing with. He missed the point totally. See what Dr. Kizza Besigye said, look, you are paying 3,000 shillings in taxes. Collecting this tax is more expensive
than what you collect.
And yet it inconveniences the local population. Why do you have to have this tax? In fact, when Dr. Kizza Besigye was cheated in that election, Dr. Kulapak, the late Yafesi Kulapak of Oyam County South, brought a bill in Parliament for an amendment of the law to abolish graduate tax. And what happened? The regime in power decided to inherit that bill and made it theirs. And that is how graduate tax was abolished. But the zeal to be able to oil all this patronage system that we see today, to take care of a huge parliament, to take care of the many RDCs we have across the country, to take care of the numerous presidential advisors that Mr. Museveni has, that bill there is so huge that somebody has to pay for it. Graduated tax would not have paid for it. To cater for theft within government, you need to collect bigger taxes beyond graduated tax. And so the elder needed to be given the mathematics of this. and he would probably have understood that there is a total misunderstanding on his part about, the case of graduated tax. So the blame game again, Dr. Kizza Besigye should not arise.
Maybe one would say, but then Parliament and maybe the administration cost was not as high as it is today. Well, this is the Hotline Show for our viewers. We really thank you that you're part of this. We shall be going for a very, very short break. And when we return, of course, we'll have to continue with the discussion. And we will be looking through and, understanding the strategic plan of the FDC, that is the third strategic plan, 2022 to 2027. Well, let's break off shortly and we'll be back.
Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
You have got to get up pretty early to go do something. We are the Alternative Digitalk. With our mobile studios, we are redefining TV presentation just as technology is setting the pace. We are blending our approach with fresh, perspectively designed breakfast show, The Mighty Drive, informative and entertainment show, exclusive and live interviews.
We President Museveni wadde juzi namulaba apima akawunga kilo 2 tasobola kalya nini bwaba alya kilo 5 weyanema okuliisa eggwanga ne bwe limundekera.
Njagala kwebaza the Alternative Digitalk etuwadde kano ka Mighty Drive era n'abatuwuliriza bonna abali ku mikutu njagala basaba mugendo maaso n'okuwuliriza.
All given to you just a click away on your phone, tablet, laptop and smart TVs. as we are streaming live on our social media platforms, on the road and on the go. We are the Alternative Digitalk.
Fellow citizens, following the sequence of events, Uganda seems to be at political crossroads.
I'm not a servant of anybody.
Madam, I know the law.
As such, Alternative Digitalk brings you the Interface Show with retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besuje.
Let's keep on the same page on Alternative Digitalk,
As he gives you the alternatives on the transition question, rule of law, human rights and freedom, youth inclusion in governance, economic stagnation, as he confirms.
I'll be always here Saturday from 10 a.m. in the morning. Be there.
Don't miss the live discussion on the Alternative Uganda, Digitalk TV Facebook pages, and the Alternative Uganda YouTube channel.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back from that short break, and now the hotline show continues. Well, like earlier on we said, the FDC party has a new strategic plan, 2022 to 2027. And one of the major emphasis for this strategic plan is to build and consolidate and expand the FDC popular support base to win state power. That's according to the preamble from the Secretary General of the party. Well, Mr. President, for any organization to have a new strategic plan, by the virtue of being new, it means there has been an old strategic plan. And the question here is, have you been able to do an evaluation of the previous strategic plans? Have they been implemented? Have they failed? Or what really happened? Maybe if you could just give us a brief account of the previous strategic plans before we delve into the new one you have.
Yeah, I think that it's necessary for us to talk about the second strategic plan of the FDC.
Yeah.
And right away, I would like to observe that the strategic plans outlive themselves. You cannot have a strategic plan indefinitely. And
Sure.
This is why organizations write strategic plans for a specific period of time.
Sure.
And in the case of the FDC, we have chosen 5 years. Some would have 3-year strategic plan depending on their mission and vision. Ours is a 5-year strategic plan, which somehow is supposed to tie up with our political calendar in a way or another.
Yeah.
Therefore, even if there was nothing wrong with the second strategic plan, still,
by default, it would
yes,
outlive.
it would outlive its periods, and we would then be writing a new strategic plan. But with that said, strategic plans are reviewed. We looked at the second strategic plan and picked out of that strategic plan some business that was not completed.
Okay.
And integrated it in the new strategic plan. We also decided to discard certain objectives that had been overtaken by events. We also did look at the changing political landscape, and through that brought in new strategic objectives that would help us counter the negative forces within the political environment and make it better for us and easier for us to operate within the emerging political situation within the country. And so between the conception of the second strategic plan and the drafting and now approval
Of the third.
third strategic plan, there have been undercurrents. A lot of water has gone below the bridge. And so the necessity to reinforce some of the weak areas in order to match with the current trends within the political situation in our country.
One would ask that, you've talked, that you've gotten a few things from the second strategic plan, perhaps that maybe that were not well implemented. And what could have been the problem that as they were projected for that particular period of time, and then we are now seeing them being carried onto the next strategic plan. What could have failed them?
Well, the changing situation, political situation that was not envisaged at the time.
Okay.
You find that I want to give you an example of a building of structures. Every political party, from year 1, 2, 3 of any strategic plan would be desirous of building, robust political structures to be able to carry the political party forward. Now, when we look at the current political situation, the question that begs is, are we going to build our political structures the normal way we would build them? Yet the dictatorship is becoming more and more repressive. The tendency for the dictatorship to respect elections is becoming clearly, something that is in the negative. Doesn't respect, you answer that in the negative. And so we want to see how these structures can be used not only for elections, but for other purposes. And so the strategic plan would then, for essence, generate those activities that can ensure that we get a leadership from the grassroots that would serve our purpose best. And so we'll do things differently from what we used to do things in the past. We also have got a strategic direction that involves building strong, effective communication and media networks. Everyday technology causes the flow of information to change from one media to another. The kind of needs in the market keep mutating. And so we got to respond to this. For example, social media is becoming more and more, appealing to the population, especially the young population. We also consider the demographics of this country that are changing, skewing themselves towards a larger population of younger people. And so we want to get to that population of voters. The strategy you used in 2006
may not be applicable.
Will not apply to today's needs. And so you have got to try to change your strategy. And therefore, this causes the strategic objectives to alter a little bit. And so, yes, to answer your question directly, there is a need for strategy to change in dealing with the emerging situations. For example, today we have political forces, new political forces coming into play. When we wrote the other strategic plan, we wrote it not knowing that populism in our politics would be taking center stage. And so what do we do in order to, not to counter it, maybe to move along with that kind of politics? Because, it is gaining traction both internationally and locally. Populism. How do we match the ever-changing trends in both international and local politics? And this is what our strategic plan specifically addresses.
Well, you talked about rebuilding and restructuring the party secretariat as one of the objectives in the new strategic plan.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How do you want to do this? You know, when you talk of rebuilding the party secretariat, do you have some slots which are maybe some portfolios which are not occupied, or maybe just make us understand this?
Well, what we are going to do is look at the kind of personnel that we have. Do the current personnel match the ever-changing environment again? Do they serve that purpose? Do we need to bring in new energy into our secretariat? What do we need to do in order to be able to communicate better? What do we need to do in able to reach out better? What do we need to do in order to attract resources to the party? You know, because resources are of essence, you know, financial and other resources. Do we have somebody who is clever enough to write papers, concept notes that can then be marketed, you know, to potential donors and supporters? All these things, you know, take the form of trying to remodel the party, rebrand it, make it applicable to the day situation, so that we as a political party can not only have to be more attractive, but, you know, aggressive in terms of resource mobilization is concerned, aggressive in terms of, you know, going out to reach to the population. What do we wear on our face when we go, and how is this worn when we go to the population, so that we are appealing to the population? What message do we carry to the population? Do we need, for example, to have a radio, you know, or television as a political party? Do we have capacity to run it? Ignore the fact that it will be fought and, you know, probably shut down. So we're going to be looking at what we want to do as a political party, examine ourselves internally, and see if there is a need to train our personnel in skills that will make them more effective in doing the work they are intended or they are hired for. If we within the Secretariat don't have the capacity, whether we can outsource while not compromising the safety of the party, because again, we have got to be very sensitive to this. We run a political organization that is affected by, you know, a lot of predators, and we have got to see how to place our personnel in order to shove off these predators. So all this is something that will be done through robust work plans, drawing from what we intend to do as is contained in the objectives, the strategy of the objectives of our strategic plan.
Before we look at other key areas within your strategic plan, could you have drawn some lessons from some of your past failures as a party? Because not everything has been done as expected. Of course, there must have been those, you know, failures in one way or the other. Have you been able to pick a few lessons and forge a way forward?
Yes, indeed. We have transcended, you know, a lot of levels of thinking. And earlier on in the show, I remember when we are in our infancy stages, we believed so much in elections. So much. To the extent that we knew we would contest, win, and be announced. That is now something we have learned a lesson from. The way things are done in this country, and the way, you know, democracy has been hijacked in this country. There was a time when we believed that we could go to courts of law and get justice. But today, when you go to a court of law, the judge or the magistrate slaps you with a bail of 30 million shillings. and you know, you're going to say, well, wait a minute. Is this the environment we're working in? shouldn't we do things differently now in order to avoid getting into this kind of trap? So, yes, the way we have done things in the past has informed how this strategic plan intends to change our methods of work in order for us to achieve our objectives. And that is the essence of changing strategic plan.
In a strategic plan, you talk about strengthening your party at grassroots levels and all that. And I want to believe that this is something you've been doing for all the years. And now what new strategy are you planning to apply to do the same task you've been doing? And how different do you really want to do it?
This is going to be contained in our work plans, but I could say, for the purpose of this show, that we are more persuaded by the need for us to have both overt and covert structures. That for us to improve on our efficiency, our efficacy, we are not just going to have just normal structures that can be seen by everybody. We will have structures as enshrined within our constitution. We have a chairman, it's visible, a general secretary in the district, a treasurer, a women league, but we will also have structures that are unknown to people for different purposes. That I think is not a subject of this television show.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Amuriat. Earlier on, we talked about the National Council that was held last week, I think.
Yes, indeed. We had National Council that was held on Thursday and Friday last week. It was the 15th National Council. And just for the sake of viewers, the National Council is a collection of top officials of the district, the chairpersons of all the 140 plus districts, the National Executive Committee elected by the biggest body, the most important body, the topmost body, which is the National Delegates Conference, invited guests, 3 leaders from the 3 leagues, Persons with Disabilities League, the Youth League, and the Women's League, would be coming to the National Council. So this is a collection of about 250 plus members coming from across the country. And we met in Najanankumbi under the theme facing the turbulent future. We recognize that our future is going to be more and more turbulent, and therefore we wanted to assert ourselves. And indeed we did assert ourselves on how to navigate the troubled water in the politics of this country. And in that meeting, there were a number of resolutions that were passed that are a subject of internal discussion, and we are going to respect the National Council resolutions, which, if I may just cite a few, the amendment of our own constitution, improvement of our internal dispute resolution mechanisms featured within the National Council. We also resolved that we will continue with the 2-pronged approach of activism and gunning for elections, so as to keep the party above water, but also specifically do those kind of actions that would bring change to this country even without going through the electoral process. So the number of resolutions, about 9 resolutions, were filtered out. Those are just a few that I want to recite, and the rest of them will be a matter of internal discussions, and therefore you will be seeing them not through the actual resolution, but through our actions.
Actually, I thought, earlier on, that the National Council meeting was part of, discussing the strategic plan or endorsing or generation of ideas in its formulation. That's why I brought in that.
Well, you are right in a way, but not entirely. There was a whole 2 days devoted to a conversation, reports given
from various districts.
No, we ahead of the National Council. I want to inform viewers. We went out to the population to review the election of 2021, and we met district leaders who raised concerns. We have covered 95% of the country. The only regions that we have not covered is Karamoja region, sub-region, on account of the insecurity in Karamoja, and also West Buganda on account of the rising Ebola cases and the lockdown of the districts of Kasanda, Mitiana, Mubende, Chankwanzi, and Chiboga, which in our nomenclature in our constitution qualify to be categorized under West Buganda. So after that, we needed to give an account of our work as leaders at the top level to the districts. So there was a report by the president, there was a report by the Secretary General, there was a report given
Finance
by the Treasurer General, and a report by the Electoral Commission. We also took our leaders through the history of the party and the threats to the party. We took our leaders through our performance in the different regions and what encumbered our growth in the different regions. And so this formed the basis of discussion and debate that took a whole day and a half. The launch of our strategic plan just took a few minutes, not more than 1 hour. But was also fundamental because then the committee that was set up, that was headed by the Right Honorable Philip Wafula Ugutu, put these ideas together in consultation with the different districts and gave the strategic plan, delivered it to us. We have given the districts a small window of about 1 month for them to look through the strategic plan, and if they have got concerns, then they would raise those concerns and bring them to us, and then we would have, the fair copy of the strategic plan. But I don't think it will change.
So for now, as we speak, we don't consider this as the
It is the
most final.
It is the strategic plan because it covers all the areas of concern, including the area of environmental protection.
Yes, I read that. I saw it.
And I think it's really, I don't know whether any other political party has pulled off something on this. And it's really working well because at the moment we have a program that we are running, Save the Planet, Green Uganda, and we are tree planting. Instead of putting a wreath on a casket, we bring our trees, and after the burial of our dear one or the wedding, we plant trees.
Well, for viewers, this is the Hotline Show, and we have Honorable Amuriat. Well, our viewers, I want to read a few comments here. Robert Mayanja, thank you for watching. He's watching from Luzira. Dixon Ojakol, you didn't tell us where you are. Brooke Williams, he's like, thank you, Honorable Amuriat. Ever publishing promises that never materialize. This is Seth. Yes, this one is Ethan Mwine. He's saying you ever publish promises, but they do not materialize. I don't know in what perspective, but well, I think I'll be opening the lines for those who would wish to give calls. Our lines are right, they will be put on the screen. But if you're using MTN, you can call us on 0789 017 145. And then those on Airtel, you can call us on 0759 132 310. Give us a call, share your views on the topic of discussion. If you're a member of the FDC, yes, you can also share your views. There is still another window. The president has talked about it. If there is something you believe has not been well captured in the strategic plan, you can as well raise your view, and then action will be taken. Well, Mr. President, you've talked about the environment in the strategic plan. You've talked about the media element. You've also talked about restructuring, the party secretariat. What other key areas have you brought on board in this particular strategic plan, other than those we've talked about?
Well, there are actually 10 strategic objectives in this strategic plan. Build, consolidate FDC's popular support base, solidarity and brotherhood. Brotherhood is a new area here where what we focus on is to not just do only politics, but bond with each other in different ways. It could be through business, doing something together, but recognizing that you, members of the same political party, are beyond just political actors, but brothers. The second strategic objective, is to ensure accountability of all elected leaders, both party and government. Now, in the past, for example, we have not pursued our elected leaders, to find out what they are doing and to ask them to account to the party. So we are not going to do this only for the government, but we're also going to do this for our own sake. Now, this objective is intended to help put to check the government in power, but also put to check our own people.
Your own people, yeah.
Say, what is it that you are doing in your council that may endanger the position of the party? Are you failing to address the needs of the population? We understand there's a lot of garbage in your city. Why isn't garbage collected? So that we criticize ourselves first before criticizing the people who have mismanaged our country. We also seek, under strategic objective number 3, to build a strong financial resource base. And I talked about this before. There's no political party that can run without financing its own activities. There's some money that comes from the government. And again, people have misunderstood this old narrative of saying iPod money. Actually, iPod, there is no money that comes out of iPod.
iPod is just an umbrella body.
Yes, NIMID, the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy, and from funding of DGF, the Europeans, carries programs within political parties. We don't touch the cash. You want to have an outreach, you are going to meet, they will come. And they will pay transport refund themselves. They will pay the service providers, they pay for the accommodation, they pay for the stationery, they refund money through mobile money. So the party doesn't touch that money. We are grateful for that effort, but we don't get physical cash. And the public needs to know this. iPod money is a misnomer. The money that comes to the party is money that is given by virtue of our strength in Parliament under the law.
It's constitutional.
Yes. There is a law that provides for this money to be given to political parties on the basis of your strength.
In
so 31 divided by the number of members of parliament, elected members of parliament, times the total money in the basket. If it's 30 billion, times that. So you will find NRM gets the lion's share of this money, about 80% of it. NUP is second political party. They get almost twice as much as the FDC does. Then FDC is third, I think, followed by DP or UPC. And then, the smaller parties with one each in the house. So, for us as FDC, we recognize that given what we want to do, the money is not going to be sufficient. And so there is a need for us to build a base, to fundraise. And this is deliberate, because today the dictatorship is standing on the way of anybody who would want, in the way of anybody who would want to support us. And so we have got to exercise ingenuity, creativity in how we deal with our sympathizers, our supporters who would wish to give money to us. We are also going to cast our net wide. If you are unable to give money, what can you give in kind? And so we are going to do things like avoiding hotel bills. When you go to the population, you stay in the house of one of our leaders or supporters, and they provide the food. That way they will be contributing in kind to the progress of the organization. Under Strategic Objective 4, we shall build a robust electoral infrastructure to compete, win, and defend victories. Now, competing, winning,
and defending.
What can we do in as far as technology is concerned? Because there's a lot of cheating in technology today. We should be able to up our game in tracking the results from where they are entered to where they are received. And so we got to build our capacity, our technology capacity, to be able to track that. And we learned lessons from what happened in Kenya recently. And so we are going to work on this. We also learned lessons from the election of 2016, where the results that Biabakama read were not the results that were transmitted. Was it Kigu? It was Kigu.
Yes.
With my professor. We will rebuild and restructure the party structures. And I talked about this before, covert and overt, to do different functions. It's contained in our program. Strategic Direction 6 is build a strong and effective communication and media network.
You've talked about that.
We talked about that. But what I want to insist is the fact that we had a lot of trouble in the election of 2021, where, to my understanding, the media was available for hire. Shamelessly. I'm not going to name media houses. But the media was used as a tool to suppress the voices of Ugandan people. It was. And I think we know biased media houses that continue to portray the FDC as a collapsing party. When there was the exodus of our members from the FDC to form ANT, the media was all over the place saying the FDC had collapsed. And I say to them, no, the movement of leaders from the FDC does not reflect exactly the movement of supporters from the FDC. Our support base continued to be there, although the leaders actually transited from the FDC to the Alliance for National Transformation. And I think, the results of the election of 2021 speak for themselves. In as far as our rating vis-a-vis the rating of those who left the party, that is going to be a debate for another day. We will, under strategic objective number 8, establish policies, best practices for land use and environmental conservation. I talked about that earlier. And under objective number 9, we'll build partnerships with other democracy-seeking forces and organizations. And then we will monitor and evaluate our strategic plan. So for viewers, this is how the booklet or book for our strategic plan would appear. It is recognizable. It has our logo. It has our name and our website. We will be uploading this as the third strategic plan of the FDC very, very soon. So we think that this, if implemented to the letter, will improve on the fortunes of the FDC as a political organization. So we launched this strategic plan in Najanankumbi on Friday last week. And it is a document that will be available to the public. It's a document that we will go with to our donors, market it wherever we go, in international meetings. We will carry this document so as to make an appeal to our donors.
Well, I have some questions for you here. This is from Nacheyune Rita. She says, what happened to his manifesto key points of reclaiming 2016 presidential victory and amplifying defiance which Besigye had built and Muntu never agreed, which power used as his strategy against Muntu? He is too silent. FDC is not the party we used to know that could spare a 6-month period without a defiance campaign. Leave aside Besigye's campaigns.
Well, first of all, Dr. Besigye is a member of the FDC. My sister Nabukera needs to know. Nacheyune needs to know that Dr. Besigye is FDC. The main driving force in whatever pressure groups have been formed, the PGA, the PFT, is mainly composed of our activists. And like I said earlier, our strategy was two-pronged, a defiance strategy and a strategy for creation of structures. My silence is deliberate on this. I know it's a work in progress. The FDC will need to go back on the drawing board on this thing of defiance because the ground has changed. Whether you like it or not, the level of repression by Mr. Museveni is fever high, if I may describe it that way. It is so high that, you know, it was easier 15 years ago to get people into the streets than what it is today. It is repression in terms of, in economic sense, is high. I talked about that earlier in the day. That whereas in the past you could ask people to close their shops for a day or two, and many would respond. Today they won't. They will tell you why. You know, what are my children going to eat? Abana balinaku banaliachi banagenda kusomera atya, you know, that kind of thing. And you know, this is also deliberate. My sister should also know that there was a deliberate program to annihilate our defiance structures within the city of Kampala. And therefore there has been a tendency to move out of this city. But I wonder what she means by my silence. I went to the electoral campaign in defiance. It was a defiance activity. We told Mr. Museveni, you are talking about corona, yet your people are mingling. We are not going to accept. And I led that. I led it. I suffered torture. I don't know where she was to be part of this kind of campaign to expose Mr. Museveni. And it's, you know, it's just 1 year ago.
There is another question here.
Yes.
Your Excellency.
Yes.
Chairman Waswa Birigwa promised to construct the party structure in 3 years. But it is over 4 years now. No signs of even an architecture plan. What happened to the promises? Is the party of empty promises?
No, far from it. I think that that was a campaign promise that we own as a party. Actually, I buttressed that promise. And if that viewer would go into our strategic plan, it is specifically stated in the strategic plan that work will begin in the preparation for the construction of a new headquarters building. And this is going to happen. Actually, the architects, the Secretary General reported the other day, have been engaged. I can't remember their names, the company that has been engaged to do this work. They are going to develop architectural plans, and we will be launching, in fact, before March of next year, we'll be launching a program for fundraising and the selling of shares. Luckily for the FDC, over the years, we have acquired property where our headquarters is found. We don't have to buy land. We are sitting on a fortune in Najanankumbi. And so we will operationalize this. We will begin slowly within the available resources. Even if we just managed a floor, one floor, that will be progress. We'll continue to build on that. But most importantly is that I want to promise that viewer that by March next year, we will be launching the construction of this particular headquarters building. But they should not be oblivious of the fact that we have had a lot of challenges. 2 years of lockdown,
Yeah, sure.
you know, came within my time. I had to grapple with bringing the party back together. And that took us 1 year. 3 years lost. If anything, actually 4 years, because we then had the period when we went into the campaigns, preparation for the campaigns, that took over 6 months. And so it is now that the waters have become a little bit clear for us. And so we are going to be working on this. I don't take offense at all about being criticized on this, because I have the reasons why this program has not taken off. Financing of this particular program has also been problematic, because where we had hoped to raise money, the world economy slowed down, and so there are not that many people who would say, look here, we are able to give this and that to support your efforts. Individuals were unable to contribute. There is another area that needed to be mentioned that was part of my own promise, and that is the commencement of a leadership academy. The paperwork is being done on this, and again, it is contained in our strategic plan as one of the areas that need to be tackled in earnest. So we're going to be working on this, and I want to assure our supporters and members out there, defiance hasn't died. You know, my defiance credentials can never be challenged. I have been seen on the front line, more than many people who are just making noise. I have been there, suffered the brunt of this dictatorship many times, not once. Missed death several times, even in the company of Dr. Kizza Besigye, who, as I've said, is a member of the FDC.
Then I have Ethan Mwine. The FDC seems to have lost a track when you became president. What happened? I don't know.
Well, I want the evidence. What track have we lost? You know? You see, when you come to these radio stations, I mean television stations, you have to deal with haters as well. You don't know whether you are speaking to your members or you are speaking to those who do not wish us well. But I think that there's nothing that...
you've not done within your capacity.
Well, even much more than that.
Yeah.
I don't know what direction we have lost. As the FDC, I think we haven't lost any direction. Our direction is one. We are steadily progressing towards capturing power in this country. Notwithstanding, you know, opposition forces that have come up, you see. I'm sure that when I became president, nobody knew that the wave of NUP would come, for example. But it did come. So we have tried to mitigate, you know, different waves, the harassment by the junta. What is most important to the concern that has been raised, which is legitimate, is that the party is still alive under our care. It has never died even a single day. In fact, it doesn't even need resuscitation because it still has its senses.
The same person also said, speaking of brotherhood, how grounded is that in the party structure after your history with General Muntu when he left? I think you've talked about this.
Well, I think it's necessary to respond to him or her. General Muntu left out of his own free will. We have since launched a program for the reconciliation and return of our former party members. We launched that in Kasese a few months ago with the return of the Honorable Robert Franco Centenary
yes.
to the fold, doing a marvelous job now in mobilization.
Yes.
Throughout the country, he's been everywhere in the country, you know, a resource that has now come back to the party. We continue to pursue our friends who left the party for different reasons, and I am glad to note that we have made progress in this direction to bring back even our friends who left and went to the Alliance for National Transformation, let alone, you know, bringing in new blood from the NRM, not contaminated, new, fresh blood, you know, from the NRM. So moving from General Muntu onwards, and I've explained this again in this show, a lot of progress has been made in building confidence in our people as FDC, to make FDC the first choice political organization in this country.
Well, in your strategic plan, you talked about working with other change-seeking, you know, forces. And one would ask, one of the things that have not been well done in this country is the opposition working together. Yes, efforts have been there, some attempts have been there, but not as one would wish. Along the way, you break away. I remember during the TDA, along the process, FDC broke away. Then just a few days, I learned that People Power was also, you know, some sort of arrangement that brings together different, you know, political groupings. Then some parties were not there, including the FDC. Now we have the PFT, People's Front for Transition. Some members are not part of this. You know, I don't know, when shall we see a united opposition? Is it even necessary anyway?
Well, the FDC has learned from her lessons, and it suffices to say that in our nearly 20 years history, we have experienced a lot of knocks and shocks as well, you know, in this journey to try to work with others. You remember the IPC of 2011?
Yeah.
That ended up in a disaster because of our desire to work with others. We have also faced a history of betrayals You know why we are not in the East African Legislative Assembly today, because we were betrayed by the Democratic Party and the UPC. We signed a memorandum of understanding,
And
trying
you
to
agreed to boycott.
yes, taking into consideration their interests. Remember that we were posting 2 members to the East African Legislative Assembly, but before the ink on the paper dried, they were nominating candidates. Taking us off balance, we didn't nominate that time, and the FDC was absent and continues to be absent because of that betrayal. Viewers will remember our debacle in the TDA and what went on. Some of us, progressive forces within the FDC, said, no, this is not good for the FDC. Today, nearly all the political players, other than the FDC, in the TDA are with NRM. The Honorable Kenya went back to NRM. He was a key player and wanted to become a joint candidate. The Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi, in fact, His Excellency Gilbert Kenya, the Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi was a key player, wanting the flag as a joint candidate. He went back to NRM. Norbert Mao is with the NRM. Betty Kamia working with the NRM. And you know, there are a host of other people who went to the NRM and yet were chest thumping, you know, making us believe they were genuine opposition figures, and yet they didn't mean what they were saying. And so, given that history, we think that, and this is why we have this strategic direction, we have to exercise some care, prudence in whatever we do with the other political parties. It is in our policy that we must work with other political forces of change. It is there. Now, we are going to be working with them on specific objectives, what we want to achieve by that working relationship. Remember that we don't have faith in the elections as a way to bring change to this country. Some democracy-seeking organizations said, you know, and this was manifest in the last elections. Ahead of the elections, there were people saying, go and get registered. Find an identity card. Who says that the election doesn't work? You can't say that, you know, elections do not work after doing it 4 times. We are the new generation. We shall knock this man down. And so on and so forth. So, whereas we're going into that election to get opportunity to speak to our people, a number of players within the opposition made everybody believe that the election is winnable and taking power is possible. So I think that we need to be at the same level of understanding before we engage with those kind of political organizations.
Well, I remember, I think it was around 2020, you know, there was some sort of confusion for the public, for the voters. One group was like Funandaga Muntu. And then one group, the FDC in particular, they had a message, no elections. So one group was like, go for the national IDs and prepare for elections. And one group was like, no. So, you know, this kind of confusion, I think...
Well, of course, the FDC did not say no elections. What the FDC said is, let's go into this election fighting. And we actually went into election fighting. That was the objective. Going to our people and telling them this is a useless government. One that does not care for you. While knowing that the outcome would be obvious, Museveni would still rig the elections. Now, if the election of 2021 has been a lesson for us all, then there has to be a new narrative. And this narrative should not just be talked about in boardrooms. The narrative should come out to the population. And we should be saying to the population, look, this is our common voice. We think that this thing is not working. Join us and let's take this direction. It is only then when we all are at the same level of understanding the dictator, that it will be possible for us now to make, inroads into working together. But if one group is saying, no, we can go for elections and move on, in the direction of elections alone, and, the other is saying, we think that activism will work, then the meeting point is probably not going to be there. But also, political organizations have changed. Tell me if it is now tenable for us to cooperate with the Democratic Party, given that it has sold off to the NRM. Tell me if it is possible for us to cooperate with the UPC of my brother Kena, the DP of my brother Mao. Because now for them, they are talking about fighting from within, fighting for a transition from within, which is really daydreaming in my view. It's not going to happen with the current Museveni that we have known for many years. It's not going to happen. So, yes, working with pro-democracy groups and individuals. By the way, we don't even rule out the case of individuals. Individuals are within our radar. We want to work with those individuals who have got the same mindset as we do. We don't want to get into any alliance or any understanding with people who don't think the same way as we do. That kind of union would fall apart.
But can that happen?
It would be disastrous. It can happen.
And you find people who think
exactly like the FDC, yes, we know.
When they're not members of the FDC?
Not exactly as such, but in terms of strategy, in moving our struggle forward. Okay. But with that said, and I have made a veiled attempt at explaining this, Mr. Museveni and the junta are not asleep. We are going to see more and more infiltration. We are going to see a wedge being driven between different political groupings who may want to unite. And so our ability to see the hidden hand of the dictator within efforts to bring political forces together is something that we must work on. We should be creative. Ingenuity is called for in this particular aspect, because Mr. Museveni will continue to use members within our numbers to cause confusion within our political organizations.
Oh, Mr. President, I'm afraid we are running out of time. We actually have to be leaving this place. But maybe one very last question. I want your final comment on about the PFT. Many believe that a certain group or section of the FDC members, they do not support. They do not subscribe to the idea of the PFT. I don't know how true is this.
I think that, first of all, viewers need to understand that the People's Government was a product of the FDC. Let's begin from there.
Before you proceed, do you still have the People's Government, or it is seized?
Well, yes, it is still there. There is a People's Government. And within the organization, our structures within the organization, our organs endorsed the defiance as one method to bring change to this country. And this gave rise to the People's Government. Many of us, including myself, are part of the People's Government. Now, probably Dr. Kizza Besigye would be the best to talk about, moving the People's Government into PFT. But I think it was well intended that there could be some people uncomfortable about
PFT,
about the people's being part of the People's Government, because it had its own connotations. The People's Government arose from the fact that we believe the election of 2016 were rigged. And so we went into the People's Government actually I was one of the pioneers of the People's Government to try to fight for our victory that had been stolen. Now, many things have changed. And the argument was that, look, we have the new kid in the block. There are people who claim this victory. Is it still necessary for us to be stuck in People's Government? And I think that is what caused the transition to the PFT. And it could have been because there was an urgency in getting more people involved, including, the new political parties like ANT, which was not there when the People's Government was formed, including NUP, which hadn't been formed by the time the People's Government was formed.
But they have since declined to be part.
And so really, of course, those are lessons that we can learn from to make an evaluation of whether the objectives of creating the PFT were achieved to begin with, let alone, driving it forward as a liberation front. And I think it's not upon me to elucidate on this. I think this conversation would involve many more people than just the president of the FDC.
Well, Your Excellency, I need your parting shot, just one last word, and we close the show.
Well, to the people out there, viewers and listeners, and to the management of Digitalk, I would like to thank all of you for your candid comments, those who have commented on our strategic plan. And just to say to you, we want to ask you to make the FDC your party of first choice. We have revived the party. It experienced a bit of shocks, in the last 2 years, as I've already explained. But there is an assurance I would like to give to you, viewers, that this party is still alive. Defiance is in our DNA, and you are going to see more of this happening sooner than later. And given that this is probably the last time I will be on this show before Christmas,
sure.
We lit the Christmas tree last time on Thursday and sang carols. I would like to wish the management of Digitalk
Thank you.
A Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
To you all out there, and a prosperous New Year 2023. Let that year be a year of struggle. And we shouldn't just be speaking from the comfort of our sitting rooms. When called upon to act, please join this struggle, because this struggle is the struggle of the Ugandan people, and is the struggle that is going to liberate our country, Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Well, thank you so much. That's the FDC party president, Honorable Patrick Oboi Amuriat. And well, this brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Hotline Show. Until next week on Monday, my name is Abdel Latif.
Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.